Hey, what's going on, everybody, and welcome back to my channel, Movie Files. Elliot back again with my weekly recap, breakdown, review of the latest episode of HBO's The White Lotus. We are talking episode 5, which was titled The Lotus-Eaters, and I can't believe we only got one episode left, but this episode literally had me on the edge of my seat, and I was just certain that someone was going to die by the end of this episode, and we're going to break it all down here in this spoiler review. But before we dive into it, make sure you all are checking me out on all my other social media accounts. If you all are new to the channel, well, welcome to the community. Consider subscribing to the channel, and while you all are at it, make sure you hit that notification bell. That way you can get the alert for when I drop new content. If you all enjoyed this spoiler discussion of episode 5 of The White Lotus, well, make sure to like the video and share the video. It helps out the channel a lot, but I also appreciate all the support. And in those comments, let's break down this episode together, ladies and gentlemen. Whether you're watching this on the live premiere or the replay, we got to talk about Kai's decision. Paula and Olivia thinking that maybe that she had something to do with that heist. We got to talk about the Mossbachers coming together for the first time and Mark getting his respect. Of course, Shane and Rachel, Armond, the whole damn crew, Tanya and Craig. Let's talk about it all in the comments below. So just a quick announcement before we break down this episode. I just want to let you all know, and I tend to do these with a lot of shows I love, especially when it comes to HBO, and I think you all know what I'm going to announce here. But coming next week for the finale, we're going to be doing a live watch along, ladies and gentlemen. Myself and the awesome community, we're going to watch this episode together. I plan on going live probably 8:30, 8:45-ish. If you haven't already, make sure you're checking the community tab so you can kind of know what to expect on the channel. But mark your calendars, next Sunday, live watch along to watch this finale. I'm going to have my regular review after the episode drops. So we're going to watch it together. We're going to break it down together. Hopefully, knock on wood, unlike recently with Mare of Easttown when HBO Max, the app crashed. Hopefully this won't crash. We can all watch together in a smooth type of way, and I'm really excited to break it all down with you all. So again, live watch along next Sunday for The White Lotus episode 6 finale. So with that being said, we have a lot to break down. This episode is fantastic. I don't know if it was my favorite. I think last week was probably my favorite, but this one was, it didn't really have that much levity, which I'm okay with because the drama was there in this episode. I mentioned again, I was on the edge of my seat watching Kai do what he did in this episode, which we'll obviously break down. I was certain that Mark was going to die. He was going to accidentally maybe have a gun. Nicole was going to hit her head on the counter. I'm just like, someone's dead by the end of this episode. But we'll talk about my theories on who might be that person in the box by the end of this review. But this episode, the writing was always there. The acting, I mentioned how great the score is. The tension was there. I just thought this was a fantastic episode of The White Lotus. And I want to know what you all thought about it. Again, let me know your thoughts in the comments. So let's jump into this recap because we got a lot to break down as the episode opens up with our lovebirds, a.k.a. Bonnie and Clyde. As we see, Kai has a surprise for Paula as he's rented out, or not rented out, but he's taken the card and given them a room so they can have a romantic night together. But it's in this scene that Kai admits to Paula that, as we saw last week, Olivia was flirting with him, and I'm glad that they addressed it, that he didn't fall into the trap, that he is really into Paula, and Paula's like, she knows. And he's like, did you tell her? Like, no, I didn't tell her. This is just what she does. She knows that I was messing around with you. So again, I'm going to pose this question here in a bit, but she finds out that Olivia knows the situation, and this is where Kai really shows how much he's affectionate for her, and which is kind of like these young lovebirds. They've only been dating or messing around for 5 days, and he invites her to move to Hawaii, live with him, and Paul is like, hey man, I really appreciate you sharing this time with me, telling me your family history and all that stuff, but I have my own life. I'm still in college. I have my own family back home. I can't just drop everything for this kind of lust situation that we have in place, but I can help you get something. And as she alludes to, those $75,000 bracelets, which I always thought in my back of head, that's going to come back up some way, somehow, which it does. And she's essentially telling Kai, hey, your situation's kind of messed up, and I can help you in this situation by getting those bracelets, which we'll obviously kind of break down that here in a bit. But let's check in with my boy Armond, who is my favorite character of this show, and he really wasn't the Armond that we know, right? He was obviously off the drugs and alcohol, and he wasn't as, funny as he has been in previous episodes, which I'm fine with because it just kind of shows you that he's trying to get back on the track, and he knows that he messed up, and Mr. Shane caught him last week. But we see Armond and Dylan kind of wrapping up their escapades from last week, and Dylan's like, hey, I'll see you next Wednesday. And Armond like, what do you mean next Wednesday? I'm going to see you tomorrow. And Dylan's like, no, man, you made me a promise. You owe me one. I'll see you in a couple days. So it just goes to show you again that Armond, when he's on on his drugs, man. He'll just say anything to get in Dylan's pants, which he ultimately did. But nonetheless, let's move on to another lovebirds, a new couple. We have Tanya and Greg as they're kind of wrapping up their situation. He's heading out, but I don't know if you all noticed. I'm pretty sure you did because it was pretty obvious. The man was coughing up a lung. He blames it on the cigars that he's having, but I mentioned it last week when I was wrapping up my review. We're thinking that maybe one of these characters that we've come to beloved in the last 5 weeks is going to be the one that in that cabin, or that coffin, I should say. But it could be Shane's mom. It could be Greg. He was coughing pretty bad. I mean, that looks like more than cigars because this just came out of the blue. He wasn't coughing like that last week. He wasn't coughing like that for the rest of the episode. So, I don't know. Greg, R.I.P. to Greg. And that might be a whole situation with when we'll talk about Tanya and Belinda. But if he does pass away, you can go ahead and forget Belinda's plans because she's going to be like probably giving him, getting his ashes and throw it into the ocean like she did with her mom. But keep an eye out on Craig in this coffin situation. But let's go back to Quinn, who another character that wasn't too involved in this episode, but we see that he's continuing to build this bondship and this kind of friendship amongst the people of the Islanders as he goes on the boat with them. And again, it just kind of goes to show what I really like about what they're doing with Quinn. It kind of speaks to, as a society, as I mentioned last week, we're so attached to our electronic devices, we sometimes forget that there's an outside world with real people and real interaction. So I love that he has put aside the electronics, not willingly, right? Obviously, the ocean swept up his electronics, but now he's able to see what a friendship, what a bondship looks like. So I really enjoy what they're doing with that character. But moving on to one of my favorite routines, which is the good morning to the Mossbacher family, as we get a brief shot of that safe. And there is more than those $75,000 bracelets. There seems to be some cash in there, some other expensive jewelry. So they're rich people taking all their goodies with them on this vacation. But nonetheless, we see in this scene here that Nicole learns that Quinn does know about the affair that Mark had. Again, I don't know, was it, and they don't refer to the timeline, was it months ago, was it years ago, but nonetheless, she is not happy that her son knows about this because she feels like she has to defend the situation, defend her honor, defend why she went back to his father, talk to obviously Olivia about it. And I totally understand where she's coming from because they only heard, or I should say Quinn's only heard that one perspective from his dad. And Quinn's eyes, he might say, hey, well, damn, Mom, you went back to Dad. He got you the $75,000 braces and you just went back to him. So I can totally understand where she's coming from in regards to defending herself in the situation, why she went back, why she, took the braces and all that stuff. So I totally respect her kind of anger towards the situation, not being able to speak her truth, right? There's always two sides to the story, and I totally understand where she's coming from. But nonetheless, we see that Nicole says, she admits that it still bothers her, that he cheated on her and had this affair. And this whole conversation is kind of broken up because Olivia is coming in looking for medicine for Paula. And it's something to note here. Now, someone had mentioned, I think last week or the week before in the comments, it's kind of being played as like a joke, like, oh, Paula has a condition. She doesn't like fruit. She can't eat too much fruit. She has a headache. She's allergic to fire. They always throw in these little jokes. But I don't know, man. There might be some truth to her medical conditions. And again, I mentioned that right now I'm thinking that Greg or Shane's mom's in that casket. But I'm still thinking that Paula might be that top candidate as well, because I think she has some really medical conditions that we should be taking pretty seriously. But nonetheless, let's move on to another morning routine with the Paddens. As Armond, who, again, he didn't really play into the comedy in this episode, but this was pretty funny to me, as he's just like, he sees Shane and him and obviously Rebecca and Shane's mom sitting down, and he's just like, let's just get it over with, as he walks over to the table. And this is where Shane, again, we talked about last week, it seems like Shane's assholery has come out with his mom being on this vacation, and yet again, he's showing his assholish ways, as clearly he knows what went down in last week's episode, and he's just kind of playing to it, right? He's like, oh, as Armond says good morning to them, oh, how was your evening last night, Armond? It's just like, goddamn, Shane, can you just let the man, do his thing, do his business outside of you bringing it up to the table and making things awkward, which the show does a great job at doing so. But I want to go into this little detail that I caught in this scene, as we see Shane's mom talking about, why she went on the vacation and this, that, and the other. But it's really interesting. This goes back to my theory about who's in this box, and it might be Shane's mom. she keeps mentioning that she's forgetting things, right? She mentioned it last week that she can't remember anything from the wedding. She's having this conversation amongst these, Armond and everyone, that she can't remember where her train of thought was. So again, I don't know if it's, dementia or anything, but I think that that's something that she's going to forget something. Something's going to happen medically with her that maybe she hasn't told. Maybe she has the dementia. She just hasn't told Shane, and maybe whatever her memory loss is going into might play into her end up in that casket. Let me know if you all are on the same boat, because I think it's very apparent and it's very upfront that they're showing us that there's something wrong with Shane's mom in regards to this memory loss that he has. But again, let me know what you all are thinking in that on that situation in the comments below. But again, we see Armond is just listen, the room is available. I'm sorry for the inconvenience. I can get the bags and everything, and you guys moved in there. And then yet again, we see, Shane's like, oh, okay, thank you. Just being a straight up asshole in the situation, just making situations just really, really awkward. But nonetheless, let's move forward to the two best friends. I'm speaking of Olivia and Paula, as they're having this conversation. And finally, Olivia just addresses the situation. She's like, who's the guy you've been sleeping with and you've been sneaking out at night with? And she's like, I think you know who he is. And they're having that conversation. That's where the rest of the family kind of comes to the breakfast table, and this is where things and this is where the show does sprinkle in that commentary, that social commentary, a little bit of the funniness here. And I love this kind of the privilege angle that the Mossbachers have, as we see Paula gets asked, why did she leave dinner last night? And she doesn't say anything, but then we see Olivia says because she doesn't like to see the Hawaiians, the islanders, dance for white people. And just seeing Mark, he put his foot in his mouth so many times in this episode, and this is one of them, as he's talking about, we're do we supposed to feel bad that we're rich? It's just humanity. It's just the way of the world. It's just America. I'm just like, dude, whenever they share Nicole and Mark's kind of how they think the social climate is, it's just the white privilege that comes out of their minds, and the stuff that comes out of their mouth is just so absurd. And it's so interesting how they play these characters, because I'm not gonna lie, when they had their little moments of the infidelity, and I feel bad for Nicole, and I kind of had a moment where I felt a little, I felt happy for Mark, and we'll talk about that scene, but then they just that kind of gets overshadowed by their, their viewpoint on the world and how they viewed situations. So again, I love the balance of how this show, you like these characters, but then you see how much of how privileged they are and how much they can just be terrible people. So I love that mixture what the show brings. But let's move on to Belinda and Tanya. As I mentioned last week, as Tanya is overthinking this situation, this one night stand with Greg, and she is just talking about how he is maybe just into the first layer of her and her onion, and once he really learns who she is, that he's going to probably be scared and run away. And this is where Belinda, she's like, oh, I'm pretty sure everything's going to be fine, but hey, my business proposal, did you check it out? Did you send it to the partners? And she's like, no, I haven't. I'm too concerned with the Greg situation. So like I said, I figured that Greg was going to be a problem with Belinda, because it seems like this Tanya character is one of those people, and we all know these type of people, right? When you give them just an ounce of attention, they think that you're their best friend. They think that you're in love with them. They just kind of take, and this kind of speaks to, and not to say that that's a bad thing, because it kind of shows you, we obviously learned that Tanya, she has insecurities. Her mom treated her terribly, so she seeks attention because she never got that attention from her mom. But again, when you give her their attention, she just wants all of your attention, right? And we see that now her focus is on Greg and not this proposal and starting this business with Belinda. And we'll talk about them a little bit later. But moving forward to seeing the room tour that the Pattons have been dying for, or at least Shane's been dying for, as Armond tells them that the room is free. And even with the room being free, Shane's still just being an asshole to him at this point. And just he clearly is just playing to the idea, I know your dirty secrets, and I'm going to hold that to my disposal, and I'm going to let it out whenever I want to. So he's holding that over Armand's head throughout this entire episode. But let's go back to the smooth operator, as Paula tells Olivia that she wants to put her necklace that her grandmother gave her in the safe. And we obviously see that she's very smooth, and hearing the code, which happens to be Olivia's birthday, I believe it was 10/27. So now she's going to use that, or 10/26, I'm sorry, use that to obviously give to Kai. But it's interesting here, I put in my notes here, what is it about this relationship, or I should say this friendship, What is it that Paula sees in Olivia that makes her want to be her friend? We obviously know that Olivia has taken her past boyfriend. She's trying to flirt with her new love interest. What is it that Paula sees in her? Because I have yet to see the nicer side of Olivia this entire season. She has said some really bad things to her parents, and she seems to be unfortunate and just seems to be take things for granted and just kind of so self-indulgent herself. I'm just curious, do you all think, and this kind of speaks to, again, these characters, we think that Paula is such a nice and innocent girl and cares about, the social commentary and the waves of the world. But hey, let's call a spade a spade. Maybe Paula is friends with Olivia because she's, I've had this in high school, that rich friend, right? And it's just like, you might not necessarily like them as a person, but hey, they got a pretty cool, they have a pretty cool situation. Hey, they can, they have the brand new Nintendo, they have the brand new Wii, they have the brand new video game, whatever the case would be. And it's like, I don't really like you, but you got some pretty cool stuff. Obviously, I don't do that nowadays, but I'm just saying, when you're in that mindset of just like, you ignore that person's personality and you ignore some of the crazy stuff they say just because they have the funds. And sometimes they might be nice every now and then, but you kind of use them for their benefit or use them for their finances. I wonder, is that what this friendship is built upon? Just she's that rich girl that just is there to be able to go on vacations. Maybe she helps her pay for her school books. I don't know. Let me know where this relationship stems from. I'm just curious what you all think about this friendship. But let's go back to Tanya as we see her trying to get her groove back as she is eavesdropping on Greg. He's going out to the pool. I'm like, hey, I'll call you later. She's going to the pool, stalking him. It's just, again, she seeks attention and she wants this man's full attention and is doing it in the most weirdest ways and just cringy ways in this episode. And again, she just gravitates towards attention. So let's go back to mother-in-law and daughter time as Shane goes out to swim. And this is, as I mentioned weeks ago, and hearing her say this, Rachel say it, she feels like she's a trophy wife because we see Shane's mom saying, just be happy. All the other girls failed to get Shane's attention, but you managed to do it. You're pretty, you're smart, you don't have to work. And she says, oh, you're making it sound like a trophy wife. It's like, yes, she is making it sound like a trophy wife because Shane wants you to be the trophy wife because she's a trophy wife, right? I would have loved to have maybe met Shane's dad. I don't know if she mentions in this scene that like she was kind of in Rachel's position, but she had her own money. But then when she married Shane's dad, she had to kind of find that balance of like what I can bring to the table. So again, it's just like hearing Rachel say that she's a trophy wife and now seeing her kind of perspective in this episode. And I don't know if you all noticed it, but each episode, Rachel, her personality has kind of went back, put a back burner. I think that's intentional to kind of show you how she's kind of putting herself in the back burner because she's becoming what she doesn't want to become, which is a woman without independence and a woman that's a trophy wife. So again, I really am enjoying that she's starting to come around to this relationship isn't what she thought it was being. Again, her marrying Shane so quickly was a problem. Now she's seeing who he really is and what he has to bring to the table, which is something she doesn't like. So going back to this Ocean's 11 plan, we see Kai he really isn't on board with this heist of a sorts, but we see Paula, which again speaks to her character flaws. She uses his family, she uses the situation of like the resort taking over your family and you fighting for your family, you getting this jewelry and getting this money and sticking it to the man. But honestly, man, I think this is Paula just spewing out subconsciously, maybe not even acknowledging that she wants the Mossbachers to get revenge. She wants justice for them having privilege, having Olivia taking advantage of, taking her boyfriends, flirting with Clyde. So I think, again, I don't know if it's intentional, but I think this is a little bit of like sticking it to the Mossbachers and particularly sticking it to Olivia and sticking it to Mark in his comments, Nicole in her comments and all that stuff, and really selfishly wanting them to have some type of, repercussions of having them have their stuff stolen so she can kind of get a little bit of a, revenge on her side. So let me know if you all feel the same way. Yes, I do think she wants to help out Kai, but at the same time, I think she's getting a little bit of it from it as well. But let me know you all's thoughts in the comments. Moving forward, as I mentioned, as the score pops in, which I love the score, as Kai walks away, we see at the same time they intercut that with Rachel starting to come to her own thoughts, and she even has a phone call with her mom, and unfortunately her mom isn't able to hear her out. And again, it's just showing you all the little breadcrumbs. We see these two characters. Kai has a big decision to make, and we see Rachel coming up with a big decision to maybe leave Shane. So I love how they intercut those two scenes. But let's go back to Mark just putting his goddamn foot in his mouth in this episode as they're boarding a boat to go scuba diving. They have this conversation with him and Nicole, and he just says, I just want respect from my son, because damn, I don't get respect from you, which obviously triggers Nicole. She ultimately leaves the boat, which we know, which is just like, I'm on the edge of my seat. It's like, oh my goodness, she's gonna see Kai, and that ultimately is what happens here. So let's kind of break down this scene as, again, Nicole feels like she's a punching bag. She's upset, and you know, the family, and she's like, what's going on, Mom? What just happened? She makes her way to the room. You know, obviously Paul is realizing, oh snap, Kai's gonna be there when she goes there. And man, this scene here was just, again, I was tensed up in this moment. I'm like, dude, something bad's gonna happen. Someone's gonna die in this scene. But let's talk about this scene. As we see Kai at this point, he gets the jewelry, he gets the bracelet, which, by the way, this is a nice character moment for this character, Kai. There's money in that safe. There's other jewelry, other expensive things, but he just comes in there just to get the bracelets. Again, I'm not condoning thievery, but I'm just saying it kind of just shows you the kind of character he is. You know, yes, he's stealing things, but he could have took all that stuff if he wanted to. But nonetheless, he takes the bracelets. Nicole's in the room at this point. She's crying up a storm. She's upset. She makes her way to the bathroom. She sees Kai, and I'm just like, something terrible is going to happen. I was thinking that he was going to grab her, push her on the ground. She was going to hit her head and die, but obviously that didn't play out. But ultimately, he does take her, pushes on the ground. Mark makes his way into the room, tackles Kai. Unfortunately, Mark is a good fighter, gets his ass handed to him as Kai gives him that 1-2 combo and kind of leaves him, he leaves the room, leaves the situation. And at this point, I'm thinking to myself, dude, there has to be a camera somewhere in the hallways. Obviously, there's not cameras in their individual bedrooms, but I'm like, Kai, he's wearing his outfit from work. I'm pretty sure he had his name tag on. He's clearly not a thief, right? He clearly is wearing the same thing he's wearing all day, and I think he's going to ultimately get caught. But nonetheless, that was a very sloppy way to handle that. But I was pretty certain that someone was going to die in that moment. I thought that, again, Nicole was going to hit her head. You know, Kai was going to maybe punch, Mark so hard that he was going to hit his head accidentally. I was certain that someone was going to die in that moment, but clearly no one did. But let's move on and kind of wrap up the rest of the episode as we head to one of my favorite moments, which, by the way, I'm thinking that the episode was going to end on that, that bank or that heist moment, but no, we had 15 minutes left in the episode, and we cut to Armond seeing and hearing the phone call come in about the situation. We also see Quinn and Paula make their way back to the room, as well as Olivia, and obviously that moment, this is the first time the kids are like concerned about their parents, and we also see Paula's reaction. It's like, what happened to Kai? Why did this go wrong? Did he get the bracelet? She's obviously just thinking about a million things in her head. But let's fast forward to one of my favorite moments, which are the dinner time scenes, as we see that Greg didn't call Tanya, and again, Belinda's like, he's gonna call, but yet again, Tanya's just like, I don't want to talk about the business right now. I just want to be distracted because I didn't get a call from Greg, which we'll talk about their moments here. We see the Pattons, and yet again, Rachel's just listening to Shane talk about this nonsense, making fun of people, bad-mouthing people, talking about money, and she's just like, what have I got myself into? And she just could care less about what's going on, which, speaking of care less, again, Belinda's trying to talk to Tanya, but we see that Greg texts Tanya, and she's like, oh, I gotta go. I'll catch up with you later. We'll talk about this later. Again, it's just going to show you that, Belinda, I'm sorry, but your plans of starting this business is looking less and less like it's going to happen because Tanya is so focused on this man. But nonetheless, we see the Mossbachers make their way to the dinner, and for the first time all season, we see Mark get some respect from his kids. We see Olivia say, Dad, your scar there looks badass. We see that Quinn's like, no, Dad, I wanted to wait for you. We're going to go scuba diving tomorrow. And, you saved Mom. And we see Nicole embrace her husband. So again, they say some stupid ass things in the way they view the world. But I'm not going to lie. I think it's more so the performances of how they're written. I kind of felt for them in that moment. I'm not going to lie. Let me know how you all felt about it. But as we move forward, we see that Olivia gives a look at Paula like, I know what you did, goddammit. I'm gonna speak to you about it. But nonetheless, we see, again, as Shane's mom is saying her goodbye, she whispers in Rachel's ear to just be happy. She's like, to shut up, put a smile on, be pretty, and be that trophy wife. As we wrap up, we see that Greg wants another fun night with Tanya as they're at the bar, and we see them ultimately go to the room, and Tanya, she talks about all her insecurities, all her layers of the onion. She even starts to break down and crying, like, take the ashes, do what you will with them. I don't want them. And he's just like, what the hell am I going to do with these ashes? But surprisingly, he accepts her for who she is and says, hey, I'm still DTF. I still want to hook up with you, even with all your craziness. He says, I don't think you're crazy. My man, he just wants to get them draws, clearly, because, yes, Tanya is a wild card nonetheless. But as we wrap up the episode, we see Nicole and Mark, they kiss, and they, like I said, they embrace each other for the first time all season. We see Armond at the dinner table with Belinda as he's saying that everyone, all these guests are just Lotus-Eaters, which I'm going to put on the screen now, is essentially, it's a Greek mythology, as you all can see, and essentially just talks about greediness and just self-lowliness and people just being self-indulged in themselves. So that's the premise and kind of the meaning behind this episode, is that all these people are selfishly, they think they're doing something well, right? We see Tanya thinking she's helping Belinda, but she's selfishly helping herself. We see Olivia thinks she's being a good friend, but she selfishly takes, Paula's boyfriends. We see Paula thinking she's helping Kai, but he's committing a crime, and now she might be involved in this situation. So we see all these people trying and thinking they're helping people, but they're really just looking out for themselves. So I love the title of this episode. But we wrap up with Shane and Rachel saying, I think I made a terrible mistake. And Shane's like, what did you say? As she walks out of the room, and we see Olivia calls out how coincidental how it was that Paula put her necklace in the safe, and then an hour later it was taken. Olivia knows. She's going to call her out for that, and we'll see how that wraps up as we see Olivia talking to Paula, and Paula's just crying her eyes out. I think that she's crying because, number one, what happened to Kai? Number two, are they going to find out? Are they going to put the pieces of the puzzle together? Which I think Olivia will. So what an end of an episode, and I cannot wait to see how all this wraps up. So again, we got to talk about the big question. Who's in the box? Right now, my number one candidate, I'm thinking, is Greg. When he was coughing that lung up, I'm like, oh, my man's going to be dead by next week. I don't know what the hell is going on with him, but I don't think Greg's going to make it out of the finale. But then I am going back to Shane's mom. That whole memory loss situation is something to keep an eye out for. And then, of course, my Paula thing. Yes, the whole conditions that she has, can't eat too much fruit, has a migraine, allergic to the fire, allergic to this, that, and the other. I think whatever her medical condition might come up into the finale. And, of course, we have other characters. We obviously know Shane isn't dead. I don't think Rachel's going to be the one in the box. And I don't think any of the staff members, like I know some people think Armond, I don't think that they would put him on a plane when he could just go to a hospital in Hawaii. So I don't think it's any of the staff members. We still got to think about Quinn. There's so many possibilities that I can't wait to see how this season ends, who's in the box, and how all this wraps up. But again, just a friendly reminder that next week we're going to watch the finale together. We're going to be going live probably 8:30, 8:45, having a good time, having a fun time, and seeing how this show all shakes out. And again, I'll still have my regular review that I'm going to post for those that can't make to watch along. But I'm excited, ladies and gentlemen. So if you stuck around for almost 30 minutes, this is when you know I love a show. I can just talk about it on and on and on again. But again, if you stuck around to the end of this video, I appreciate every single one of you all. Just a friendly reminder, if you haven't already, make sure to like the video, share the video, continue the conversation in the comments below. Make sure you hit the bell notification so you can see next week's review, but more importantly, for you can tune in to next week's watch along and check out all the other reviews that I have on the channel right now. Again, so thankful for you all, very appreciative of you all for the support, and I really can't wait to see what next week has up its sleeve. So thank you all again. Hope you enjoyed this review. Hope you're staying safe. We'll see you in the next video.